Welcome to our in-person and virtual explorations of Jewish Galicia. We are in a small town located somewhat halfway between Krakow and the Polish mountain capital, Zakopane. We are in Rabka, or Bad Rabka, Resort Rabka, as it was called by the Nazis during the Second World War, which once had a fairly large Jewish community. The first written record of the Jews living in Rabka belongs to the year 826. That's when a young Jewish woman, Anna Goldberger, got converted, became Catholic in that old Catholic church. And there is a written record of this event in the city archives and in the archives of the parish of this church. And this is the first written record of the Jews living in Rabka. And at that time, there were 6 Jews living here. But the community started growing in the late 1800s. So let's start exploring. And we're starting from Market Square, the old center of social and commercial life of this town. In the early 1900s, there were around 450 Jews living in Rabka. Most of them were doing quite well and were rather assimilated. It was the time when a lot of property on the square belonged to the Jews, including this house, which of course has been remodeled many times since then, but originally belonged to Abraham Freundlich, the wealthiest Rabka Jew, the elder of the local Jewish community and the representative of the Rabka Jews in the Kagал of the neighboring town of Novi Targ. Another local Jew by the name Henrik Steiner owned 2 stores on the square, which were frequented both by the Poles and by the Jews. The buildings lasted till our days. Still today you can find houses in Rabka with Jewish symbols. And we are now in the old neighborhood of Rabka, which once was dominated by the Jews. In the period between the end of the First World War and the outbreak of the Second World War, local Jews, with the support of the Jewish visitors of this resort town, had enough resources to support basic Jewish institutions such as a synagogue, a mikveh, a matzah factory, and a house for the elderly and the poor. These days, only this bima stone and the staircase are the only artifacts which once belonged to the synagogue and lasted till our days. The mikveh house was remodeled into an apartment block, but it lasted till our days, and it's still there, as long as a few other houses, which once belonged to the Jews. The neighborhood is separated from the rest of the town by the Raba River. During the Second World War, Rabka became an important place for the Nazis. It was to Rabka where the Nazis moved the notorious Sipo-SD school. The school was known by the name Tereska, and it occupied this building. That's where they trained torturers and executioners, and the students were the Germans and the Poles and the Ukrainians who sympathized with the Nazis. Among the forced laborers of the school were the local Jews. The Jewish prisoners were also used as human targets on the school's shooting range. Over 100 Jews were murdered in the field, in the forest, behind the school. And quite recently, the World War II Jewish cemetery has been restored there, thanks to the efforts of a few locals of Rabka who got interested in the Jewish history of this place with the support of the municipal authorities and the international donors. A monument was placed there, as well as the concrete steps, which were put on top of the mass burials. Another monument was created from the old Jewish tombstones of the destroyed Jewish cemetery, which was located in the neighboring town of Novi Targ. The Nazis destroyed the cemetery, but they used the tombstones as the construction material to build the sidewalks and the roads in the neighborhood of the school. These are a few old tombstones that lasted till our days. There are more concrete steps and a few more monuments. The Rabka Jewish community was never re-established after the Second World War. Only a few Jews managed to survive the war, some by hiding, some escaped from that school and survived the war. And only recently, the Jewish heritage of this place has been uncovered by locals who got interested in the Jewish history of their native town.